Hi, I'm Don McLaughlin. I own DKM Enterprises here in Uvalde, Texas, along with my father. I'm a candidate for mayor of Uvalde and would ask for your support. I've been in Uvalde since 1963. My father came here as a coach, and we've been here ever since. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Yeackle. I'm a candidate for mayor of Uvalde. I'm a local businessman, just like my competitor. I've had the Golden Chick now for 18 years, including various other small businesses in your community. I'm originally from Del Rio. I'm a transplant, moved out here to open my business in 1996. Over the years, I've served you as a city councilman, president of Rotary Club. I currently serve on the Southwest Texas Water Alliance, which is an organization that is designed to protect and preserve our water resources. And I believe I can be an effective advocate for your frustrations at City Hall. Thank you for your time.
Should voters be able to decide whether to spend $24 million on streets, or do you think it should be determined by council?
Oh, okay, me first. For me, it's a no-brainer. I think it should go to the people. But at the same time, the members of council and mayor who support it need to actively get out and solicit support on behalf of the project. And the $24 million that's allotted is, and I think Don and I will be in agreement, the $24 million that's allotted isn't even enough to address all the street and drainage work that's necessary.
Okay.
I would also think that it needs to be decided by the voters. $24 million is a lot of money that's going to affect the voters. I mean, and the one thing I would try to do is educate the voters to one thing, that if we bring this to a vote and it doesn't pass, then the street issues are off the books for the next 2 years. Because once it's come before the voters and it doesn't pass, then we can't bring it up again for 2 years. So, I mean, if we bring it out, and I want the voters to decide if we do it or not, but if we don't do it, for 2 years your street issue is dead in Uvalde as far as borrowing money for those projects.
What do you think about funding non-departmental community-centered activities like Boys and Girls Clubs, Scouting, and the library?
I think for too long we've neglected the youth of Uvalde as a city. We don't have enough activities for them. That I think that we should go out and start working with our schools, our churches, look for private funding, look for public fundraisers, look for grants that we could create more activities for our youth to do in Uvalde.
Having served on council previously, the non-departmentals are, the individual contributions may seem insignificant, but the sum total typically is over $1 million to the general fund. And so, it's one of those things that no one wants to hear, but at the end of the day, the majority of the money that's required, other than new fees and assessments to the taxpayer to come up with revenue to support the street work, is going to have to come in part from those non-departmentals. It'll be important for the community and private businessmen like ourselves to be willing to contribute more to continue some of the good practices of these programs. Now, one of the programs that when I was on council that I pushed for along with Roy Munoz, who's currently on council, was creating a after-school and summer rec program using the old golf course clubhouse. And so that's something that I would push for again. And that was originally pitched where private funds would be matched by the city in a manner in which it would encourage us to be aggressive in soliciting funds for the purpose of creating that youth program.
Okay. What are the biggest issues facing Uvalde?
Well, obviously, I think streets is going to be paramount for us, and us addressing the streets in either the form of a bond issue or a CO issuance. I happen to favor the bond issue to the voter. And then number two, it hasn't gone away, and it's been there since my time and before on council, which is water, and the base acre foot being unfortunately up for debate in this next legislative session.
I would do the same thing as far as number one, the issue facing Uvalde is streets. Number two is our water, and number three is our economic growth. We've got to do something to start bringing growth back to Uvalde.
How transparent should city government be when it comes to the media?
It should be open. the city government should be transparent. The citizens through the media need to know what's going on at City Hall, so we should be open and transparent to everything that goes on. I mean, we represent the city and the citizens, so they should know what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree. Transparency has to be first and foremost, that anything barring that prohibited by law, meaning personal information, social security, date of birth, that kind of information, information on juveniles, are the only things that I can think of offhand that should not be privy to open record. The one big problem we've had in the past is I know that for some years now the media has had difficulty with the police department in getting timely releases of criminal reports of activity.
Okay. Will you make marijuana offenses the lowest priority for law enforcement, particularly when it comes to medical marijuana?
For me, having served as a police officer years ago, I put personal possession in the same category as MIP or other non-violent, non-property crimes. And whether you like or dislike the issue, the bottom line is clogging up our system with incarcerating those individuals at the local level at the county jail for misdemeanor offenses is a waste of time and funds when we have very little room and we're constantly having to release and shift individuals who are incarcerated for property crimes and violent crimes to make room for these individuals. So I would make it a very low priority, but at the same time, it's an issue that's addressed by the state and the feds. The only thing we can choose to do at a local level is encourage the police chief and the department to issue citations rather than formal arrests for misdemeanor offenses.
To me, the marijuana issue is not an issue. It's a judicial and legislative issue that has to be passed there before we do. The mayor has no control over what goes on with the marijuana. We don't set the law, and we have no control over it.
Will you clean up the Uvalde Police Department?
As far as cleanup, we just hired a new police chief. The one thing that I would do, I would work with the new police chief and I would work with council to see that we're bringing the police department to a higher standard. I think at this point you've just hired a new police chief. You got to give him time to go in and see what he's going to do. And I think that the smart thing would be for us as a council is to work with that chief and see that we bring our department to a higher standard.
For me, like you said, having served as a police officer, now it's been years ago, I have a little bit of insight, but at the same time, having served on council, some of the mistakes we've made in the past included an atmosphere in which mayor, council, and management tended to try to micromanage the police department, that we were not competitive in our salary, so we didn't attract the best candidates for the job based on the low salary offered. And third, we really never gave that individual an opportunity to put in place their policies and procedures. So the bottom line is that, in my opinion, with the new chief in place, who I do think is a professional, they should be given the opportunity for the first year to set the tone for what they want to do in the department, what changes they do or don't think are necessary, and in the appropriate manner for council, management, and mayor to address is to review that on an annual basis and judge that individual based on the outcome rather than our historical behavior of micromanaging every personnel matter, every promotional matter, every discipline matter. So I would hope going forward that we would give professionals the opportunity to run the department.
Where would you get the additional money needed to fund the street maintenance, projected to cost up to $750,000 per year?
Well, as many of us have talked about before, you're going to need a charter amendment that would allow for the specific creation of a mechanism to collect funds specifically intended for continuing ongoing maintenance of the streets. Anything short of that is simply going to have to be street assessments and additional rate increases that are never popular. And so I think I certainly would be in favor of a charter amendment to be put before the voters this coming November.
Well, the one thing I would do, Uvalde used to have a street maintenance fund. The first thing I'd want to know is what happened to it, where'd it go, and what would it take to reestablish that, and what cost it would be to us to reestablish it. I mean, every year we used to set so much money aside. What's happened to that money? Where are we taking it? And that's one of the questions I would want to do before we go out and assess more fees or whatever, to find out where that particular money has gone and why we're not putting it aside.
Okay.
What would you like to accomplish as mayor? Do you have an agenda?
As mayor, I'd like to see Uvalde start to grow again and prosper. I would like to see Uvalde become more business friendly. If a new business comes to town, I'd like to have it where they're met with open arms and what can we do to help you and bring the business here and bring business to Uvalde. I would like to see more activities for our youth to do in town and things like that. But most of all, it's the economic growth and bringing business to Uvalde is one of the main things that I'd want to do as mayor.
Well, economic development is always number one on everyone's list. The only thing that the city has always handicapped itself on is that we're always Johnny-come-lately to the party. A specific example is the Eagle Ford Shale, where all the communities to our south were proactive and got involved at the very beginning, before drilling even rarely began, organizing their efforts to attract those corporate entities to their communities. Unfortunately, in the case of Uvalde, we were 4 or 5 years late coming into the party and really never gave ourselves a chance to bring that potential revenue and resources to our community, and now are suffering the consequences by only getting kind of the leftovers from the region. Number two is going to be securing our future water and the needs of our community, and continuing to push back against large communities like San Antonio, who threaten, through their need for additional water, threaten the resources that are limited for our own ability to continue to grow. And last, to get the street maintenance program done one way or the other, because at the end of the day, kicking the can down the road is simply going to cost the taxpayers even more money.
You are a busy man with a demanding business enterprise. Will you be available to talk to people, return phone calls, and listen to people?
Well, I've had a number of businesses over the year, any given time 2 or 3 small businesses, and during my time on council I felt pretty comfortable that I was easily accessible. Since I'm in a retail setting business, I've generally been very easy to find. I've always made my cell phone publicly available to the city and any constituents, and so I think people can judge me based on my past performance, and I think they'll find that I'm exceedingly accessible.
Yes, I would make myself available, and I would listen to any person that has valid concerns for the city of Uvalde, and I would be available. And again, I would make my phone available and an email address to answer any questions or concerns they have.
What would you do to promote economic growth?
Again, I would go back to the city. The one thing we are missing is in the city is if new business comes to town, they have no adversary with the city. I mean, we need to have a liaison when new business wants to come to town. That person greets that person and walks them through every department or whatever needs they have to make it proactive. I mean, right now, if new business wants to come to town, we don't know what direction to send them in. So the biggest thing that I think is that we've got to become more business friendly and open our arms to greet more business, because like John said earlier, we've missed a lot of opportunities in Eagle Ford Shale that those companies wanted to come to Uvalde, but they weren't met with any open arms about coming here. So they went to these other areas, and I think we can still go back and get some of those businesses if we took a business friendly stance, and open arm, with a welcome open arm feeling.
For me, it's twofold. I'll echo what Don said in reference that the city, unfortunately, businesses come to Uvalde in spite of the city of Uvalde, as far as their ability to develop and create real estate and business opportunities in Uvalde. My hometown of Del Rio has been very proactive in the last few years in creating a city website that's user-friendly, it's easy to move through. In addition to that, their code enforcement department created a section that's also exceedingly user-friendly on their webpage that allows any potential developer, broker, or retail business individual to go to the site, find out what permits are required for what project, who the contact person is. It has a progression that tells you once you've completed Form A or B or C, who the contact person is, how many days the turnaround is before they'll contact you for the next phase of any work that needs to be done. So becoming user-friendly, easily accessible, and welcoming, because like I said, we've been we've grown in spite of ourselves. And number two, the other part of that equation is we have too much overlapping responsibility for the facilities within our community. No offense to any individual organization that promotes the venues within our community, but the fact that we don't have a single entity promoting, for instance, the Fairplex, the Civic Center, the Opera House, having all that under a single umbrella, which is easily done with an interagency agreement between the taxing entities, makes it so much simpler for one organization to promote any and all of our facilities, because at this point, we don't get the most bang for the buck out of the use of our facilities as it's currently allotted.
Do you think the city needs a plan to work with other entities like UCISD and the county? How would you implement such a plan?
Well, I mean, the biggest problem we've had in the past, quite frankly, is egos. That the leadership from the different organizations, i.e. the elected board members, council members, and commissioners, typically starting with the judge, the mayor, and the school board president, have had difficulty putting their egos and personalities aside in the past and working to common purpose. I mean, we can committee ourselves to death, but at the end of the day, it's just a matter of having people sit down, apply some common sense to a problem, and working together for a common purpose. I mean, we all represent the same taxpayers. And so the bottom line is it just takes those individuals sitting down and working together, like the city and the county did in the transfer of the property from the fairgrounds to the Fairplex to the county. That's a good example of the two working together. I'm hoping that in the future the school district and the city can work together on behalf of my pet project, which is the after school and summer rec program using Memorial Park and the old golf course.
And I'll repeat the question. Do you think the city needs a plan to work with other entities like UCISD and the county? How would you implement such a plan?
I think we definitely need that plan. I think that's what's missing right now. We should come together as a group and work together. Anytime in the last 2 years you ask somebody, well, we're not bringing business to Uvalde, they blame it on the schools. Well, we have bad schools. We're not doing it. But yet nobody with the city went to the school and said, what can we do to help you? Same thing with the county. The county is the city. I mean, yes, they control the whole county, but they're part of the deal. And we need to be working hand in hand with the county, with the school, with the junior college. I've said this all along. That's one of the problems that we have. There's no communication and no working. Whether it be egos or whatever, we need to reach out across the street and work together for the common goal of all of us. Instead, today, like I said, we're pulled in 5 different directions, which ultimately it's the same thing that we all want, but we're all going in a different direction. We can be working together to accomplish it sooner and faster for all of us. So yes, I think we should all be working together.
Why should the voters choose you over your opponent in the mayor's race?
I think the voters have a pretty good choice either way they choose. I have a business here in Uvalde. John has a business here in Uvalde. I have 61 employees as of today. It's a tough job managing 61 people, and I would like the opportunity. I think Uvalde has some strong issues facing it, and I think I have the ability to reach out across the street and work with the school, the county, and so forth.
Why should the voters choose you over your opponent in the mayor's race?
Like Don mentioned, I don't think there's a bad choice here, and quite frankly, as far as the frustrations that the average citizen feels, I think Don and I probably have almost non-existent the differences we have on what the problems are, maybe a few minor differences on how we might address them. The key pitch I basically make to people, all things being equal, because I consider Don a friend, is that the only real thing that separates the two of us is the fact that I've already served in this institution and left after 2 terms 4 years ago, and that having had that experience, I think I can be more efficient and effective in addressing the issues that concern us a little quicker because there's no learning curve for me. And number 2, I think because of the critical issue of water and my involvement over the last 8 to 10 years, along with J. Allen Carnes, Mayor Cody Smith prior to him, John Harrow, Lewis Capp, Vic Hildebrand, all the individuals that for decades have been fighting this water battle, Jay and I found ourselves the face of that fight for the last 8 or 10 years. And so, unfortunately, with the current council, not a single member of council has ever participated in those processes. And there's a real vacuum there in leadership. You know, Jay was the inside guy at the Capitol for us, and I was the guy running around the 9 surrounding communities gathering support from our neighbors in that effort. And I think that experience and those hands-on connections that I've developed over the last decade give me that slight edge when it comes to the experience.